Okay. So in this session, we'll just have a brief discussion regarding losses. We'll solve a numerical and then we'll move on to deflection. Okay. So just a revision before we move on to your numerical. It's been a lot of time since the previous class. Okay. So we had a few losses, right? First one was due to elastic deformation. So the formula here you can see it is M into FC. Okay, M is what? This modular ratio, and FC is stress in concrete. Okay, stress in concrete, not in steel. Stress in concrete at the level of steel. At the level of steel. So Y will be equal to E. Remember this. Okay. So next loss was loss due to shrinkage, wherein we had what? E, or that is shrinkage strain. This is shrinkage strain into what? Modulus of elasticity of steel. If you multiply that, you will get loss due to shrinkage. So we have two different formulas, for one for pre-tension and one for post-tension. Remember this formula. Next, moving on, we have loss due to creep. Loss due to creep has three factors or three variables, that is M into FC into phi. Where M you know, FC you know, phi is nothing but creep coefficient, or creep coefficient, and that will be as per your code book. Then if they do not give you this creep coefficient, if they provide you ultimate creep strain, you can use this formula to calculate creep loss. Okay, ultimate creep strain into FC into ES. You can use this formula or you can use this formula depending upon what the given value you have. Okay, then you have one more loss due to anchorage slip. Okay, anchorage slip. Delta is the amount of slip. Okay, either in mm or whatever unit they have provided. Okay, delta is the amount of slip. Then ES and L is what? L is the span of your beam or whatever member you are concerned with. Then moving on, you have due to friction. Okay, due to friction, you have this formula P naught into mu alpha plus Kx. Mu is a coefficient of friction. Alpha is your angle, okay, angle of inclination. K is what? K is wave effect. X is distance. X is the distance. You can use this formula to find out loss due to friction. And moving on, we have two cases under friction. Okay, when first case is when we have only one jack. Okay, only one jacking end, and other end is anchorage end. Okay, when this is the condition, slope will be what? Slope will be equal to 4E by L, and alpha will be equal to 2 into slope. 2 into slope. Slope is how you calculate using this formula, and then 2 times your slope is equal to alpha. Alpha you can observe it is here. Alpha is here. Slope is given here. Okay, X will be equal to L. X you can observe here. X is nothing but your span. Okay, when you have only one jack. But when you have jacks from both the ends, okay, when you have jacks at the other end also, you have one more jack. Totally from both the ends, you are pulling your cable. So when that is the condition, X is equals to L by 2 and slope is equals to alpha. Okay, slope is directly equal to alpha, but here it was 2 times, right? And X was equal to L. So here the conditions have changed. So remember, depending upon the number of jacks used, your values of alpha and X will vary. Okay, moving on, loss due to relaxation, the last loss. Okay, 6th number loss is the loss due to relaxation. It is 2 to 8%. Okay, 2 to 8% of initial pre-stress. So this number will be provided in your given, whether to use 2% or whether to use 5% or we should use 4%, 3%. All these value will be given. Okay, so these are your losses. Just a revision before we move on to your numerical. So last numerical we are dealing with, we are looking into today before we move on to deflection. Okay, so I think we have discussed this, all of this, and then last one. Okay. Okay, so this is the numerical which we are looking into today. So problem number 2.2. Can anyone read the problem statement for me, please? Can anyone read the statement? Rushikesh Demji is here. Can you please read the statement?
A pre-stressed concrete pile of cross-section 250 mm
yes
by 250 mm contains 60 pre-tensioned wire of each 2 mm diameter, uniformly distributed over the section. The wire is initially tensioned on the pre-stressing bed with a total force of 300 kN. If ES equal to 210 kN per mm square and EC equal to 32 kN per mm square, calculate the respective stresses in steel and concrete immediately after the transfer of pre-stress, assuming that up to this point. The only loss of stress is due to elastic shortening. If the concrete undergoes the further shortening due to shrinkage of 200 into 10 raised to minus 6 per unit length, where there is a reduction of 5% of steel stress due to creep of steel. Find the greatest tensile stretch which can occur in a pile 20 meter long when fitted at 2 points 4 meter from each end. Assume creep coefficient 1.6.
Okay, thank you. So what we have a pile. Okay, we have a concrete pile. Okay, we have a concrete pile. So we are dealing with losses in a pre-stressed concrete pile. So this is a unique example which we are going to solve now. So we have a pre-stressed concrete pile of cross section 250 by 250. It is a square pile. It is a square pile. Okay, and having 60 pre-tension wires. Okay, we have 60 number of wires. Okay, so I'll show you this. You can observe in this section we have 60 number of pre-stressing wires. 60 number of wires of how many mm? 2 mm in diameter. 2 mm of each of the wire is of 2 mm in diameter. Okay, so the cross section is 250 by 250. Okay, that is done next. So it uniformly distributed over the section. The wires are initially tensioned on pre-stressing bed with a total force. Okay, so initial pre-stressing force is given as 300 kilonewton. Okay, ES is given, EC of concrete is given. Then calculate respective stresses in steel. Respective stresses in steel and concrete. Okay, in steel and concrete immediately after the transfer of pre-stress. Okay, after we transfer the pre-stress, we have to calculate what is the loss that is occurring. Okay, no, not the loss. We have to calculate what is the stress in steel and concrete. Okay, assuming that up to this point, we have to assume something. Assuming that up to this point, the only loss of stress is due to elastic shortening of concrete. So this is one important statement you have to remember. So we have to assume that only loss that is occurring now up to this point is due to elastic shortening. Okay, we know what is elastic shortening and how that loss occurs. So we can use that formula to calculate the stress in steel and stress in concrete. Okay, so moving on, if the concrete undergoes a further shortening due to shrinkage, okay, so due to shrinkage, there is further shortening. Okay, so this is your coefficient which is given 200 into 10 power minus 6. Okay, while there is a relaxation of 5%. The relaxation loss is how much? 5%. Shrinkage coefficient is given as 200 into 10 power minus 6. Okay, of steel due to creep of steel. Okay, find the greatest tensile stress from which can occur in a pile. You have to find the greatest tensile stress. Okay, we'll look how to find this greatest tensile stress. Okay, 20 meter long. The pile is how many meter in length? It is 20 meter in length. Lifted at 2 points. Okay, lifted at 2 points, 4 meter from each end. From each end, we have to lift the pile from 2 points. Okay, 4 meter from each end. Assume your creep coefficient of 1.6. So this is our given data. Now we'll look into how to exactly solve this numeric. So we have a concrete pile. I have shown you the cross section. It has 60 number of wires of 2 mm dia each. Okay, so what is the total area of steel? So it is pi by 4 into d squared, pi by 4 into d squared into number of wires. Right, pi by 4 into 2 squared into number of wires. So this is your total amount of steel. Okay, in mm squared. Okay, next, moving on. Initial pre-stressing force they have given. I have told you it is 300 kilonewton. It is the initial force which is applied. Next. So what is the stress now? What is the stress now? P by A, right? P divided by A. So now we want in wires. If you want in wires, you have to divide by area of steel, right? Force divided by area of steel. So area of steel, we know it is 188 and force we know is 300. So 300 into 10 power 3 to convert it to newtons. Okay, then area of steel. So we get the stress in steel. Initial stress in steel is 1590 Newton per mm squared. Okay, so stress in wires we have got. Next, alpha E. Alpha E is nothing but modular ratio, okay, which we write as M. Modular ratio M is equals to modulus of elasticity of steel divided by modulus of elasticity of concrete. So it is coming around 6.56. What? M is equals to 6.56. Okay, now what about stress in concrete? Stress in concrete, we know a force, we know P, right, divided by area of concrete. How we have calculated over here? Force by area of steel, right? Similarly, force by area of concrete. force divided by area of concrete, that is cross-sectional area. Okay, so we have found out the initial stress in wires and we have found out the stress in concrete. Okay, both of this is done. Now we know due to elastic deformation, 6.56 is what? This modular ratio into 4.8. So what is this loss due to elastic deformation? I have told you it is M into FC. So M is 6.56 multiplied by 4.8. So we have got loss due to elastic deformation as 31.5 Newton per mm square. Okay, loss due to elastic deformation is done. Next, stress in steel after the loss. Okay, stress in steel after the loss. So initially, how much was the stress in wire? It was 1590. Now some loss has occurred, that is 31.5 is the loss. So 1590 minus the loss will give you the stress in steel after initial loss, that is after elastic deformation. Okay, so this is the amount of stress that is remaining in your steel. Now, what is the force? We have got the stress. Now we want in terms of force. So how to calculate, how to convert this stress to force? Multiply the stress by what? By area of what? Area of steel, because we are dealing with steel, right? So we have to multiply the stress that we have calculated now by the area of steel. So we had calculated 155.8, right? This thing multiplied by the area of steel. Okay, you will get you this. So if you divide by 1000, you will convert that Newton to kilonewton. So they have divided it by 1000 to convert the Newton value to kilonewton. Okay, so this is the force after loss, force P. Okay, after loss, after elastic loss, 293. So how much was the initial force that we had applied? Initial force that we had applied, it was 300. Right, so you can observe here it was how much? It was 300. But after the loss, how much has it gone down? It has gone down to 293. Okay, 293. So now we have got the stress or the force in loss, in steel after losses. Similarly, we have to calculate the stress in concrete. After steel, we have to calculate stress in concrete. So how do you calculate this force? Right, this force divided by what? Divided by area of concrete. 250 by 250. You will get the stress in concrete. Okay, so I hope you have understood up to this point. Up to this point, have you understood, guys?
Yes, sir.
No problem. Others?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. If you have any doubt, okay, just let me know. If you feel I'm going fast also, if you have not understood any point, please you can interrupt and you can let me know. Okay. Various other losses. Now, after we are done with stress in steel and stress in concrete, okay, that was the first part of your question. Now we have to find out the various losses which are occurring. So they have given us some coefficients, right? They have given us coefficient of creep. Then they have given this coefficient or the shrinkage strain also they have provided. Right? So with the help of that, we can calculate various other losses. So loss due to creep. Loss due to creep is what? M. This is M. This is FC. And this is phi. Okay, phi into FC into M will give you your loss due to creep. Okay, will give you your loss due to creep. So phi they have given 1.6, FC we have calculated 4.7, and modular ratio also we have calculated. So you have got the loss in creep. Loss due to creep. Okay, so these are all the losses due to creep, shrinkage, all of these are occurring in concrete. Okay, remember they are occurring in concrete. Sorry, not in concrete, they are occurring in steel. Okay, now loss due to shrinkage, loss due to shrinkage. So they have given us this shrinkage, shrinkage strain, right? Shrinkage strain. So shrinkage strain multiplied by ES. So this is nothing but your modulus of elasticity of steel. So shrinkage strain multiplied by modulus of elasticity of steel will give you your loss due to shrinkage. So loss due to creep is over, loss due to shrinkage is over. Now relaxation loss. For relaxation loss, they have told us to consider 5%. Okay, 5%. So 5% of what? 5% of the initial stress. Okay, 5% of the initial stress in steel. Okay, so 5% meaning 5 by 100. Okay, multiplied by your stress. Stress in steel after your elastic loss. Stress in steel after your elastic loss, that is over here, 558.5. Stress in steel after your losses, 558.5. So that loss we have considered, so that stress we have considered. So 5% of that will be 77.9. So all the losses we have calculated. Now calculate the total loss. Total loss will be how much? Addition of creep loss, addition of shrinkage loss, addition of relaxation loss. So that is equal to 169.2 Newton per mm squared. Okay. So this is a summation of all these three losses. Along with these three losses, also we have this loss due to elastic deformation, right? So this is also a loss. So you have to add this loss also. So 169.2 plus 31.5. So the total amount of loss in steel, okay, total amount of loss in steel is equal to how much? 200 Newton per mm squared. So it is including your elastic loss, loss due to elastic shortening of concrete, loss due to creep, loss due to shrinkage, and loss due to relaxation. Okay, all of this combined is equal to 200 Newton per mm squared. So now the final pre-stress in steel, okay, final pre-stress after considering all the losses. Okay, so this was your initial pre-stress which was applied in steel, initial pre-stress which was applied in steel before all of the losses. Before any loss occurred, this was the amount of stress that was applied to steel. Now we have calculated the amount of loss was 200.7. So this is the amount of loss. So what is the final pre-stress remaining in your steel after all the losses? It is 13989.3 Newton per mm squared. Okay, so this is the amount of stress that is left in your steel after your losses. Okay, now convert this stress to force. Convert this stress to force. What you have to do? You have to multiply this by area of steel. Okay, so this into area of steel, that is nothing but 188.49. You multiply, you will get the force in Newton. Okay, force in Newton. If you want to convert this Newton to kilonewton, just divide this by 1000. Divide this by 1000, you will get the answer in kilonewton. That is 261 kilonewton. Okay, so now we have found out the stress in steel. Now similarly, stress in concrete. So this force, okay, this force which we have calculated here divided by area of concrete, that is 250 by 250. So we have got stress in concrete. Okay, so after you get a stress in concrete, now we have to go in our third part of our question. That is we have to find the maximum tensile stress which is occurring in your pile. Okay, which is occurring in your pile. Maximum tensile stress they have told us to calculate. Okay, so you can assume that they have told that it is lifted at 2 points. Lifted at 2 points, you can observe we have 2 points over here. Okay, and it is located 4 meters from the support. So this is your not from support, from the ends. From the end 4 meter. From the end 4 meter. So the total length is 20 meters. So 4 and 4 if you minus, so the central span is 12 meters. Okay, so now this beam just looks like what? This beam looks like your simply supported beam with 2 overhangs, right? Simply supported beam, we are having 2 overhangs. Same, right? So it is a simply supported beam with double overhang over this side and overhang over this side. So it is a similar problem. It is also symmetric. So if we just divide this beam into half, right, it is symmetric about both the halves. So it is symmetric over here, and this side also it is symmetric. So the beam cross section, we know it is 250 by 250, right? 250 by 250. So now what we have to calculate? First thing that we have to calculate is the self weight. Self weight is equals to 0.25 into 0.25, right? Cross section multiplied by the density of concrete. Cross section multiplied by the density of concrete, that is 24. So we have got the self weight of pile as 1.5 kilonewton per meter. Now bending moment at x. Bending moment at x meaning at this support, because we are lifting at this support, right? So we have to calculate the bending moment which is occurring over here. You can calculate at this point, or you can either calculate at this point. Both will come the same. So we'll calculate at this point, we'll consider that point as x, and we will calculate the bending moment over at this point, particular point x. So it will be what? Consider the dead load. Consider the dead load as acting as a UDL. Consider the dead load acting as a UDL. So it is acting throughout, the dead load will be acting throughout, okay? So I'll consider only this part. So how much is this UDL? It is 1.5. Right, so what is the moment generated here? 1.5 into 4 into 4 by 2. Okay, so 1.5 into 4 squared by 2. Nothing, we are just calculating moment over this point caused by this UDL. So it is 12 kilonewton meter. 12 kilonewton meter is the bending moment at X. Okay. So moving on, we have calculated bending moment, we have calculated self weight, we need I. Moment of inertia, we need moment of inertia is what? BD cube by 12, right? BD cube, sorry, B into D cube by 12. Okay, for a rectangular section. Now B is 250, D is also 250. So what they have done is 250 raised to 4, they have done directly divided by 12. So this is your moment of inertia, mm raised to 4, mm raised to 4. Now for calculation of your extreme fiber stress, what is the formula? What is the formula that we use? It is P by A, right? P by A plus, minus My by A. Okay, so P by A is what? P by A, force 300 by your cross section area of your concrete. Okay, area of your concrete. So we have got that as 4.18 minus My by A. Minus My by A. So what is My by A? M we have calculated 12. Right here we have calculated 12. M into 10 power 6 to convert it to Newton mm, okay, into 10 power 6. And what is Y? What is Y? It is 250 by 2. Okay, the cross section is how much? 250. So this extreme fiber stress, okay, extreme fiber stress we have to calculate. So it will be at the bottom, right? So it will be at the bottom. So how much is this distance? This distance is 250 by 2, that is 125. So 125 divided by I. So I we know it is 250 raised to 4 by 12. So that value is 4.6. Right. So 4.18 minus 4.16 is equals to minus 0.42 Newton per mm squared. So you can observe it is minus. So minus meaning it is tensile. Right. So we have calculated the tensile force in concrete, because the tensile force will occur where? At the extreme fiber at the bottom. And at the bottom. So we have calculated at the extreme fiber at the bottom. So it experiences tensile stress of how much? Minus 0.42 Newton per mm squared. So we are the usual formula that we use, P by A minus My by I. Okay, that you can use. We have not gone into that third term, that is PEY by I. Okay, PEY by I, because eccentricities have not been given. So we have neglected that term, and only first two terms we have used, that is P by A minus My by I. Okay, you can substitute all these values and you will get minus 0.42 Newton per mm squared. Okay, so we have calculated the tensile stress in concrete. That is the third part of your question. This was the second part, wherein we have to find the stress in concrete and stress in steel. Second part. And then first part of our question was what? To find out stress in concrete and stress in steel after the initial loss. That is the law after your loss of elastic deformation. So this is our first part. So your question had three parts. We have calculated all of those. Okay. So this was the first part. Calculate the respective stresses in steel and concrete. First part we are done. Then we have calculated all the losses, and then we have calculated the greatest tensile stress which can occur. That is minus 0.42. Okay. So I hope it is clear. If you have any doubt or if you didn't understand any part, please let me know. Have you understood, guys? No problem?
Yes, sir.
Yes, others? Vijay? Yes, Vijay, are you there? Then Somu, are you there? Have you understood? Others, I need you to reply, please, so that we can move on to your next part or your next chapter. Shubham, have you understood first class?
Sir.
Understood, no problem. Then Nitin Patil. Nitin Patil has understood. What about others, Manjunath and Prabhudev?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Prabhudev. Okay. So
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
I hope you have understood. If you have any doubt, please feel free to ask. Okay. So now we can move on to your next your next chapter, that is regarding deflection. So are you able to see the screen which I've shared, PPT?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay, okay. Okay, so now we will start regarding your module 2 regarding deflection of beams. Okay, so what is deflection? What do you mean by deflection? Can you tell in general terms what do you mean by deflection? Anyone? You have the answer on a screen, but I want a general explanation for what is deflection. You have studied in your structural analysis and all the other design subjects also. What do you mean in general by deflection of a beam?
The bending of a beam, sir.
Bending, you mean bending?
Yes, sir.
I think it is what you're trying to tell is because of bending, there will be some deflection which will be occurring in your, sorry, deflection, I mean displacement which will be occurring. So that you term as deflection, okay?
Yes,
Correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So when you apply a load, or for a beam, okay, when you apply a load, okay, or if you do not have any load because of the self-weight, okay, self-weight will also have some effect on your beam, right? So that will cause bending of your beam, right? So as you can observe in your figure at the right hand side, so because of a central load which is acting on the beam, so you can observe that the beam has sag, okay, it has started to bend. What will happen? So there will be some amount of deflection. So this was the initial line, right? Initial how your beam was, it was straight, and then it has deflected by some amount. If it has deflected, so how much amount it has deflected, that is nothing but a deflection, what we call. Okay, so usually deflection is considered in the vertical plane. Okay, in the vertical, not in horizontal. Deflection is the displacement. Okay, it is the displacement or the movement of your beam in your vertical direction. Okay, so it may occur at various places. Okay, it is not only at center, it is over here also. Deflection is also here. It is also here. But where is it maximum? It is always maximum at the where it is loaded. Okay, usually where it is loaded, not every time, but usually whenever you have a concentrated load on a beam, it is usually under the load. Okay. So this is regarding your deflection and where is the maximum deflection occurring. So one term we have to define where or to find out where it is occurring maximum, where a deflection is maximum. So maximum deflection usually occurs where the slope is zero, So I hope you remember what is meant by a slope of a beam and what is meant by the displacement. Okay, so if I consider slope, okay, if I consider a slope at this point, okay, so the tangent, if I draw over here, it will be horizontal. And the tangent will be horizontal. So what is the slope if the tangent is horizontal? The slope is 0. Right, if the tangent is 0, the slope is 0. Okay, sorry, if the tangent is horizontal, the slope is 0. So when the slope is 0, the maximum deflection is set to occur at that point. Okay, so if I consider a tangent over here, so there will be some amount of deflection which is occurring. If this is the tangent, okay, if this is the tangent, then there will be some amount of slope which is occurring, right? Some amount of slope. This is the horizontal, and then there is this slope which is occurring, theta, which you usually call as theta. So at this point, we have this point, your maximum, you have your deflection is your slope is maximum at this point. But what about deflection? Deflection is 0. But if you consider at this point, the slope is 0, but the deflection is maximum. Okay, so they are contradictory. So deflection, what is deflection? It is defined as the vertical displacement. As I've told you, we consider displacement in the vertical plane. Vertical displacement of a portion of a point on a loaded beam. Okay, it may be any point. It may be any point at your longitudinal section, any point. Okay, so not only at the center, we can consider any point on your beam. The maximum deflection occurs where the slope is 0. So as I've told you, when we have a slope is equal to 0, that point you have a maximum deflection. Okay, so remember this point. This is very important. Wherever the slope is 0, you have your maximum deflection. Okay. So if your beam, okay, if your deflection is in this direction, it is below, it is considered as positive. And if your deflection is above, your beam is hogging, that is considered as negative. Okay. So in this case, your beam is sagging, right? It is in sagging, so it is going downwards. So your deflection is considered positive. And when do you have a hogging kind of bending? In which case you have a hogging kind of bending? When do you get a beam which is in hogging state? Or when your beam is deflecting upwards? When does that occur? So usually your RCC beams will face sagging, right? Will face sagging. What about pre-stress beam? Before transfer, there will be, because of a pre-stress, they will be deflecting upwards, right? They will be deflecting in this format. So when your deflection is in upward direction, it is considered as negative. So remember these terminologies, okay, plus and minus. Remember these are very important while solving numericals. Okay, so this usually occurs before transfer. Before transfer. What I mean by before transfer is before your loads are applied on your beam, before your live load is applied on your beam, because of a pre-stressing force, your beam is in hogging shape. It is in this format. Okay, the profile is hogging. And once the loads start to act, okay, when your beam is under service and your live load is acting on your beam, it becomes neutral. It becomes neutral. Okay, or it may start to sag. Depending upon the design, it may become neutral in profile or it may start to sag. So after your service, it will become positive. The deflection will become positive. Initially, it was negative. Initially, because of pre-stress, it was what? It was hogging. And after your load has started to act during service, okay, it will become neutral or it will become sagging. So it is positive, it is negative. So remember these conditions. Okay, so moving on. So this was just a general definition of what we mean, okay, of what we mean by deflection of beams. Okay. Since a pre-stressed concrete member is smaller in depth, okay, so usually a pre-stressed members, the depth is smaller. As I've told you, that is one advantage of your PSC, okay, pre-stressed concrete member. So the cross section is smaller considered to your RCC, okay. So if you have the same load which is acting on RCC, this might be the section. Okay, say some load W is acting. So require this amount of concrete or a cross section of this size to handle your load W. But if you use pre-stressed, okay, if you have the same load W which is acting, the cross section will be smaller compared to your RCC. So as I've explained to you here, since a pre-stressed concrete member is smaller in depth than an equivalent reinforced member, the deflection of a pre-stressed concrete member tends to be larger. Since your cross section is smaller, so a deflection will be more compared to your RCC. Okay, suppose this is our RCC member deflection and this will be our pre-stress member deflection. So deflection is usually proportional to what? Proportional. So consider deflection as delta. It is usually proportional to your moment of inertia. So higher the moment of inertia, it is stiffer. Okay, if this is higher, okay, the member is stiffer and sorry, it is inversely proportional. It is inversely proportional, not directly proportional. Okay, so if your member is stiffer, your deflection will be lesser. And if your moment of inertia is smaller, your deflection will tend to increase. It will tend to increase. Okay, so moment of inertia will be higher for RCC because the section is more. The section size is more. So I is more over here, hence a deflection will be lesser. But I of this section is smaller because the depth is smaller, right? D over here is smaller, D, right? Because of this, your deflection will tend to be more. What is the I formula? What is the I formula? Can anyone tell me for rectangular section? deflection of beam, in that we need I, moment of inertia. What is the moment of inertia for a rectangular section? Can anyone tell me? No answer?
BD cube by 12, sir.
Right, BD cube, we have used it in a previous numericals, right? BD cube by 12. So what do you mean by moment of inertia is nothing but our stiffness. Okay, the higher our stiffness of your beam, lesser is the deflection, Okay, so it is inversely proportional. So moment of inertia of this, okay, pre-stressed concrete beam will be lesser because D is lesser. And we can see that D is raised to cube. So a smaller change in D will cause larger change in moment of inertia, right? Because it is raised to cube. So the B will not change much. Okay? Even if you change your B, there will be not much change in your moment of inertia, but small change in D will cause large change in moment of inertia. Okay, so that is why your pre-stressed member tend to have larger deflection. So we need to control that deflection, right? We need to analyze what will be the probable deflection, and we need to try to avoid that deflection. Okay, so a method of calculation of deflection, we have various methods which you have studied in your previous semesters. Right, you have studied, I hope you have studied a double integration method and you have not skipped on this method. Okay, moment area method is very easy. This is very easy. Conjugate beam method you have studied, and principle of virtual work, that is nothing but strain energy method. So in a double integration, we use double integration, right? Double integration. What is double integration? Why we use this double integration? So what is the formula that we use? What is the formula that we use to calculate your moment? It is d square y dx squared, that is equal to moment, right? Moment by E. At moment by E. So what is your deflection? Deflection is nothing but y. Deflection is termed as y. So how to convert this d squared y by dx squared to y? So how do you do it? You do double integration. You integrate it twice, right? If you integrate twice, you'll end up with y. That is nothing but a deflection. So this is nothing but a double integration method, where you integrate this term twice. This term, if you integrate twice on both the side, okay, you'll end up with what? You'll end up with deflection, that is y. So this is your double integration method. A brief idea I have given you regarding double integration method. I hope you remember moment area method, wherein you draw your bending moment diagram. You draw your bending moment diagram, and then you calculate the area of this bending moment diagram. And what your area of your bending moment diagram gives? Area of our bending moment diagram gives what? Anyone recalls? Area of this bending moment diagram. What will it give you? No one recalls. And what about area multiplied by the distance? Area multiplied by the perpendicular distance from the support. This is x. This is your first theorem of moment in the moment area method, and this is your second theorem. Can you recall? Anyone recalls? No one? So area gives you theta, or your slope. Okay, area gives you area. If you calculate, okay, area if you calculate, it gives you your theta, and area multiplied by x, it will give you your deflection. So this is your moment area method. Now moving on to conjugate beam method. Anyone recalls what is conjugate beam method? Conjugate beam method. Anyone recalls? Conjugate beam method, do you recall? No one? So conjugate beam method, wherein you convert your beam. Suppose you have a beam, you have a central load. Okay, you have a bending moment diagram. You draw your bending moment diagram. So what you do, you convert this beam. Okay, it is a simply supported beam. You convert this to what? A fixed beam or a simply supported beam. You put this as a loading on this beam. Okay, you convert it. Conjugate beam method, wherein you put this load, you remove this load, and you put this load. That is, you put whatever your bending moment diagram that you have drawn, you consider this as a beam now. What you do, you convert from this beam, you convert it to this beam. Okay, you draw your bending moment diagram and then you consider that as a loading on your current beam. Okay, and then you find out your reactions and then you find out your moment. Okay, reactions give you theta, okay, and moment gives you delta. That is your slope, not slope, it is a deflection. So this is your general idea how you find your deflection and your slope in your conjugate beam method. Okay, try to recall what you have studied in your previous semesters. The principle of virtual work is difficult. I think you have not studied this. So it is using your this thing, strain energy. Okay, strain energy U. You have to use strain energy and you have to find out what is the deflection. So whenever you have a deflected shape, right, this is your original beam. Okay, suppose it is a cantilever, and when you load it, so it will deflect by some amount. Okay, and whenever we have deflection, okay, it is considered as a elastic deflection. So whatever the shape that we draw, okay, we term that shape as elastic curve, right? Elastic curve. Why we term it as elastic curve is because we assume that whatever deflection occurs, it is within the elastic limit. Okay, so it is termed as elastic curve. So when we load it, it will deform. It will deform. So this has some energy stored in it. This beam will have some energy stored in it, and that energy is your strain energy. Okay, strain energy, and that we calculate using this formula, which is termed as U. Okay, and then we can calculate the deflection. So these are various methods that you can use to calculate a deflection. Okay, so one method is your double integration method. The double integration. Second is your moment area method, then conjugate beam method, and principle of virtual work. So this method is very easy. So we will be using moment area method to calculate your deflection in your beams. Okay, we will be using moment area method. So you can use any other method to calculate. We will land up with the same answer. But since this method is very easy for you to understand and to recall, we'll be using moment area method to calculate your deflections in your beams. Okay, so moving on. So types of deflection. So your pre-stressed concrete beams have two types of deflections. So they have two types of deflection. First is short-term deflection, and one more type is long-term deflection. Short-term and long-term. So what do you mean by short-term deflection? So short-term deflection occurs during transfer or at transfer. Remember, at transfer. So at transfer, we know that we are dealing with only dead load and live load along with your initial pre-stressing force. Where at your short term, that is at a transfer. Okay, so to calculate your short-term deflection, what we have to calculate? We have to calculate deflections caused due to dead load, due to live load, and then also due to pre-stressing force. You have to consider these three while calculation of your short-term deflection. And long-term deflection. Okay, it is occurring usually under service loads. Okay, when your beam is put into service, at that time you have to calculate your long-term deflection. So there, along with your dead load, live load, and your pre-stressing force, okay, along with these three, also you have what? Deflection caused due to creep and deflection caused due to shrinkage. You have to add, okay, deflection caused due to creep and deflection caused due to shrinkage. You have to add these two to calculate long-term deflection. Okay, so short-term deflection deals with only dead load, live load, and pre-stressing force, and long-term deflection deals along with these three. Also, you have to calculate deflection caused due to creep and deflection caused due to shrinkage, right? So as the name itself says, it is long-term because it is caused after a long time, right? Creep and shrinkage occur, especially creep. Okay, it occurs after a long time, and the shrinkage, it may occur suddenly or it may occur. It is relatively early compared to your creep. Okay, but these dead load, live load, and pre-stressing force, they act immediately. Immediately they will be acting, right? And they will cause deflection in your beam. So these are termed as short term, and these are termed as long term. Okay, the deflection of a flexural member is calculated to satisfy the limit state of serviceability. Very important. So we need to calculate all these deflections. Okay, we need to calculate deflection due to short term. I will write it as ST, and then also due to long term, I will term it as LT. Okay, so we will calculate these deflection, long-term deflection, short-term deflection, and we will compare them. Okay, we will compare them with the limit of whatever the code suggests. Okay, limit, we have to compare that. So we have certain limits that your beam deflection should not cross. Okay, so if it crosses that limit, that deflection amount which is occurring, if it crosses that limit, it is no longer considered to be serviceable. Okay, so if your beam starts to deflect in a very large manner, so you'll not feel safe under it, right? If you see your beam over your head, if you see that is deflecting too much, you'll have a fear that it will collapse anytime. Okay, so because of that, you'll consider it non-residential. You will start to fear to live in that house, right, under that beam. So it is not serviceable, it is not appealing. Okay, so serviceable, it has to be under the limit state of serviceability. So we have certain limits that your short term and long term should not cross, and what those limits are, let me show you. Okay, so that limit is span by 300. Okay, span by 300 for your short term, and for your total deflection it should be under this limit, span by 250. Okay, the span will be known to you, L, capital L, right? Span divided by 250. So you get a limit, and the long-term deflection should be under this limit, that is span by 250. Okay. So I hope you have understood short-term deflection and long-term deflection. So you have to calculate short-term deflection first, and then you have to go for long-term deflection. So the total deflection is the resultant of the upward deflection due to pre-stressing force and downward deflection due to gravity loads. Okay, let me explain what this statement tells you. So there is upward deflection because of a pre-stressing force, right? So consider this as a beam. I'm showing you a longitudinal section. Okay, so consider this line as your neutral axis. I will name it as NA. So this is your neutral axis. So when you have a pre-stressing force, when you have a pre-stressing cable, okay, so you have a pre-stressing cable over here. Okay, so this is your pre-stressing force P. So can anyone tell me now whether your beam, because of this pre-stressing force P, whether it will cause this shape, it will cause hogging in your beam, or whether it will cause sagging? Whether our beam will bend in your upward direction or whether it will bend in downward direction because of this pre-stressing force P. Any answer? Please feel free to answer. Whether you are correct or not, that is secondary.
Sir, hogging, sir.
So upward direction.
Upward, are you sure? Are you sure, guys? Two of you have answered upward. How many of you say downwards? Anyone who is feeling that it will bend downward direction, it will sag? Or everyone is voting for upward deflection?
Upward, sir.
Upwards. Itaker is saying upwards. Others? Others are also in line with this answer. Others also feel it is upwards. Okay. So your beam will deflect upwards because of your pre-stressing force. Okay, it will not deflect downwards. Why it will deflect upwards? Because your pre-stressing force is below your neutral axis. Okay, your pre-stressing force is below the neutral axis, so it will cause hogging. Okay, it will cause upward deflection. So usually your pre-stressing cable, it will be below your neutral axis. Okay, we want hogging. Okay, so that it will counteract your loads. So it usually pre-stressing force will cause upward deflection. Okay, so that is what is mentioned in this statement. Upward deflection due to pre-stressing force. Okay, now when we have loading which is occurring on your beam, that is either it is dead load or it may be live load. It may be UDL or it may be a point load. It may be a single point load or it may be a multiple point load. So whether it is any of this load, so it will always act in downward direction. All of these loads will always act in downward direction. So when your load is acting in downward direction, it will cause downward deflection in your beam, right? So as I've told you, downward deflection we'll consider as positive, and upward deflection we will consider as negative. Okay, so that is what is mentioned over here, downward deflection due to gravity loads. So gravity loads include your live load as well as your dead load. These are considered as your gravity loads. It is both live load and dead load. So your total deflection is the summation of both of these. Total deflection. It is the resultant of upward deflection caused due to pre-stressing force and downward deflection caused due to gravity loads. Okay, so whether it is plus or minus, whatever is the sign we have to consider, and then we have to write down the total. If it is positive, your beam is bending downwards. If your value comes in negative, your beam is in upward deflection. Okay, so this is a resultant. Okay, only flexural deformation is considered, and any deformation due to shear force is neglected in the calculation of total deflection. So remember this, you have to not consider any shear force deflection. Okay, any deflection which is caused due to shear force. Okay, only flexural deformation. By flexural we mean bending, and we mean axial loads. Okay, only loads, that is your loading, axial loading, and your flexural, that is your bending, that you have to consider in your flexural deformation. No shear forces are considered in the calculation of your deflection. Okay, so this is how you can calculate a total deflection. Moving on, what are the various factors that influence your deflection? What are the various factors? So the first and foremost factor that is you can easily tell is the imposed load and the self-weight, right? The dead load and the live load. These are the main factors which will cause deflection in your beam, dead load and live load. Other than that, we know we are dealing with pre-stressing forces, right? So pre-stressing force is the second thing which causes deflection in your beam. Next, what are the factors which influence your cable profile, right? Cable profile. How many types of cable profile can you name? Can you name, guys, cable profiles? Can you name a few? Each one of you can name a cable profile. Please name a few cable profiles for me. You have studied. Okay, should I ask you? Sanju, please name one cable profile. No answer. Rushikesh, can you please tell me a cable profile, any cable profile? Yes, Sanju is trying to speak. Have you understood the question what I'm asking? Cable profile. Can you name one cable profile?
So where is that?
Cable profile, you do not understand what I mean by cable profile?
No, sir.
Cable profile is nothing but the shape of your tendon throughout your longitudinal section.
Okay.
So any you can recall which you have solved previously?
I didn't attend the classes only.
Okay. So Sanju, can you name a few cable profiles? Cable profile is nothing but how your cable is arranged in your this thing, longitudinal section. Now can you
It
name
will
a
be
few?
hogging and sagging.
Not hogging and sagging. I'm drawing cable profile. See, I'm drawing. Can you now recall? Which is this profile? What is this? What kind of cable is this? It is a straight cable, right? Straight cable. You can see it is a straight cable. So that is nothing but the profile of your cable. How it is arranged in your beam. Okay, now next, what is this now? Second one which I have drawn.
It is sagging.
Not sagging. It is called as parabolic cable. Okay, parabolic. Okay, it is called a parabolic cable.
You have to tell the shape about that.
It is a parabolic. You can observe it is not a circular, it is
okay.
parabolic. Okay, this is the shape of how your cable is provided in your beam. Okay, this is a straight cable. Okay, this is a halved tendon, okay, single halved, and this is doubly halved. Okay, it is bent at 2 points. So depending
And
upon
what is
your,
the upper one?
this is called harped, H-A-R-P-E-D. H-A-R,
Heart, huh?
heart, no, not heart, I am telling H-A-R-P-E-D, halved
Ah.
tendon. Okay, this is single half, meaning it is bent at 1 point, single half.
Okay.
And then this is bent at 2 points. Here it is bent and here also it is bent. So it is double halved. Okay, single and double. And this is a straight cable, and then this is a parabolic cable. Okay, so depending upon your cable profile, your deflection will vary. So this is one factor, major factor, which decides your amount of deflection that is caused. Okay, depending upon the cable profile. So what is the next? Modulus of elasticity, very important. Modulus of elasticity, that is nothing but E. Okay, E of S, that is modulus of elasticity of steel and modulus of elasticity of concrete. So depending upon that, your deflection will vary. So when your modulus of elasticity is high, what will be the deflection, whether it will increase or whether it will decrease deflection? Is it directly proportional or is it inversely proportional? How is your modulus of elasticity of steel related to deflection? Suppose your modulus of elasticity increases, whether a deflection will increase or decrease, whether it will increase or whether it will decrease. Are you following? If your modulus of elasticity increases, whether your deflection will increase or whether it will decrease. Try to answer. Any
So it
idea?
will decrease.
It will decrease. Why will it decrease? What logic have you thought?
As modulus of elasticity increases, it will decrease.
That is what correct. You have said whatever your answer, it is correct. But why does it increase or decrease? Why does it decrease with increase in elasticity, modulus of elasticity? So what is modulus of elasticity a measure of? What do you measure with this particular modulus of elasticity? It is nothing but the strength which you measure, right? It is nothing but a measurement of your strength. So automatically, if your strength increases, deflection will decrease, right? Your beam is stronger, right? Your beam is stronger, hence the deflection will automatically decrease, right? So depending upon your modulus of elasticity, right, your deflection will vary. Next, moment of inertia. What do you mean by moment of inertia? It is nothing but I. So as I've told you, I is inversely proportional to your deflection, right? If your moment of inertia is high, your deflection will automatically decrease, right? So if it is less, your deflection will increase. Next, shrinkage and creep. So depending upon the amount of shrinkage and creep that is occurring in your concrete and also your steel, okay, concrete as well as steel. So in steel, there is no creep, okay, in steel there is no creep, there is the relaxation that is occurs in your steel. And shrinkage occurs in your concrete, shrinkage and creep both occur in your concrete. So depending upon the amount of shrinkage and creep that is occurring, your deflection also varies. Okay. Then next important thing is span of your member. So can you tell me the relationship between span and deflection, whether it is directly proportional or inversely proportional? Span and deflection, whether it is directly proportional or whether it is inversely proportional.
Directly, sir.
Directly, if your span increases, your deflection also increases, correct? So if your span is more, the deflection automatically will be more, so it is directly proportional. So depending upon the span, your deflection varies. Now support condition, whether your beam is fixed, whether your beam is whether a beam is simply supported or any other type of support, depending upon the support condition, your deflection will also vary. Okay, so remember this might be asked in your exam. List and explain the various factors which affect the deflection in a beam, okay, particularly in a PSC beam. Okay, so the very important question you have to list and you have to briefly explain all these factors, how they are related to deflection, whether they are directly related, whether they are indirectly related, right? You have to explain. Okay, so have you understood the factors which influence the deflection? Any confusion? Any of the point which you
No,
didn't
sir.
understand? Yes,
No, sir.
you have understood or you have not understood?
Understood, sir.
Yes, okay.
Understood, sir.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to next thing. Permissible deflection. So as I've told you, limit state of serviceability we are concerned with. So your IS 1343, okay, IS 1343, which is the code book for your PSC, very important. IS 1343, okay, 1980, first edition, specifies the limit of deflection. Okay, it has some specification of how much the deflection has to be. Okay, so the total upward deflection, okay, upward deflection, it is usually caused by a pre-stressing force, right? So upward deflection caused by a pre-stressing force should be within this limit. And what is that limit? It is span by 300. Span by 300 you can calculate, and you can calculate the deflection caused by a pre-stressing force, and you can compare whether it is permissible or not permissible. If it is more, it is not permissible. If it is within this limit, it is permissible. Okay, it is safe. Next, the total deflection. Total deflection, how you calculate total deflection? You calculate by the resultant, right? Resultant upward deflection and downward deflection. Both of these you add, okay, and you calculate the total resultant deflection. Total deflection, delta T. So now you can compare this delta T to this limit, that is span by 250. Span you will be knowing 10 meters, 8 meters, 5 meters. You can calculate the limit, and then you can compare that to delta T. Okay, if it is less, then it is okay. If it is more, then it is not okay. You have to redesign your beam, Okay, so this is regarding your permissible deflection. So you can go through this clause, that is 19.3.1. Okay, and you will find out this wherein they have mentioned these limits. Okay, so this is taken from code. This is not any thumb rule which you have applied. Okay, this is taken from this code. Okay, from this clause 19.3.1. Okay, so I hope you have this code book with you. I have sent a soft copy. Okay, go through this. Okay, now dealing with short-term deflection. Okay, short-term deflection, as I've told you, it is due to dead load, live load, and it is due to pre-stressing force. So short-term deflection, I will write as delta, and short-term, so I'll write it as ST. Okay, delta ST is equal to delta caused by what? Caused by dead load plus deflection caused by live load LL plus deflection caused by pre-stressing force. So I'll write as PF. So this is short-term deflection. Okay, short-term deflection. But this pre-stressing force, okay, this deflection will usually be in upward direction, right? Upward direction, and this will usually be negative. Okay, because pre-stressing force will cause your beam to hog, right? It will cause upward deflection. So this value will usually be negative. Okay, so depending upon plus or minus, you can substitute depending upon the sign, and then you can calculate delta ST, that is delta due to short-term deflection. Okay, so now moving on. So under short-term deflection, now we will look into deflection due to dead load and live load. Under short-term, okay, under short-term, the first point, due to gravity loads. So under gravity loads, we have dead load and live load. So now we will study how to calculate that short-term deflection caused due to dead load and live load, that delta DL and delta LL. So now we have a simply supported beam. Okay, simply supported beam. You can observe it has a UDL. It has a UDL of intensity W. Okay, intensity W. So if you have that, what is the deflection caused? Delta. Okay, deflection delta is equals to 5 by 384 WL raised to 4 by I. So after the class, what you have to do is you have to make a chart. Okay, make a chart and write down various beams and their respective deflections. Okay, so this deflection occurs where? Can anyone tell me where is this deflection occurring? Is it occurring at the support or is it occurring at the center span? Where is this deflection occurring? In this beam, whether it is at center span or whether it is at your support. I'll give you a hint. This is the maximum deflection, M max, delta max. So where is our maximum deflection occurring in this beam? Is it at center span? Is it at support? Or is it at any other point? No idea? No idea? Can you guess? Can you guess?
Yes,
Where?
at center.
Center, right? Correct answer. So it will occur at center. So this is simply supported beam, and when you have a UDL on top of it, it will sag in this format, right? It will have a parabolic shape, right? And the maximum deflection will be at the center. So this is your delta. So what is this delta equal to? Delta is equal to 5 by 384 W, which is this value W, and L is the span. L is nothing but the span of your beam, right? Span divided by EI. E is what? E is your modulus of elasticity of your concrete, and I is what? I is modulus of moment of inertia. Okay, moment of inertia. So when you have a UDL, okay, UDL and a simply supported beam, you can use this formula. Then if you have a point load at the center, point load acting at a center, and you have a simply supported beam, so you can use this formula to calculate the maximum deflection. This also occurs at the center. Okay, it will also occur at the center. So this is your delta, which is occurring at the center. Okay, delta is equals to PL cube by 48 EI. So you have to remember this formula. PL cube by 48 EI. Okay, for UDL, it is 5 by 384 WL raised to 4 by EI. And for point load acting at a center, it is PL cube by 48 EI. Okay, make a chart later on and note down these values. Okay, so we will be needing this formulas for your calculation of a delta. Okay, now if you have a cantilever beam, okay, it is fixed. You can observe it is fixed at this end, it is free at the other end. So you have a UDL which is acting throughout your cantilever beam. So this is the deflection which is occurring in your cantilever beam, WL raised to 4 by 8 EI. Okay, so can you now tell me where is this deflection occurring? Okay, this is also delta max. So can you tell me where this deflection, maximum deflection occurs in a cantilever beam? At the free end, right? 100% correct, at the free end. So it is fixed. So it will be straight initially and then it will go bending like this, right? So this is a deflection which is occurring. So it is occurring at the free end. So this is delta, which is calculated using this formula. WL raised to 4 by EI. WL raised to 4 by 8 EI, sorry. Okay, so now when you have a point load, if you have a point load P, okay, acting at the free end, so deflection will occur at the free end, maximum deflection, right? And that is calculated by using this formula. PL cube by 8 EI. PL cube by, not 8, it is 3 EI. PL cube by 3 EI. So you have to remember these two formulas also. Make a chart and draw this figure and write down these formulas next to that. Okay, so these formulas in exam you have to remember on your own. Okay, so any beam if they give you, yeah, you should be able to calculate the delta. Okay, and these delta are due to dead load and live load. Okay, remember it is due to dead load and live load. Now, moving on to next type of beam wherein you have random loading. Okay, point loads, you have number of point loads and they are situated not symmetrically. You can observe they are not symmetric. They are randomly placed, okay, at any distance. Okay, so when you have this kind of beam and you want to find the maximum deflection, okay, you want to find the maximum deflection. So you can go by your moment area method. As I've told you, we have many number of methods that you can use to calculate, but here we will use moment area method. Okay, moment area method. So first what we will do, so this is W, okay, W, which are the loads which are acting on your beam. So it is a simply supported beam. You can observe it is a simply supported beam. So I have drawn this BMD for this. BMD. So this is your BMD diagram. You can observe. So maximum deflection will occur where? At this point. Maximum deflection will occur here where your BMD is maximum, right? So now I need to calculate this area. Okay, I need to calculate this area. So this area into my perpendicular distance will give you your delta, maximum delta we are concerned with. Okay, you can use either of the notation. You can either use this notation or you can use this triangular notation. Any of this you can use. So what your moment area method says? Moment area method says area into perpendicular distance from the support. Okay, perpendicular distance x bar from a support divided by EI will give you your delta. Okay, so now we are concerned with this maximum delta which is occurring at the center. Okay, so I have to calculate this part area. Okay, this part from the support, area from the support up to your point which is concerned point. Okay, area from the support to your concerned point you have to calculate. This area we need to calculate now, this shaded area. Okay, so it is a non-uniform area. It is not triangular, right? It is not exactly triangular. So what I've done is I have divided that area into two parts, area A1 and area A2. Okay, area A1 is triangular, area A2 is trapezoidal. Okay, it is trapezoid. So area A1 I'll calculate separately. This is the centroid, okay, of this triangle located at a distance of x1 from the support. From the support it is located at a distance of x1. And this is the centroid of your area A2 located at a distance of x2 from your support, at a distance of x2 from your support. So once you calculate, okay, A1 x1 plus A2 x2, that will give you your total area, that is AX bar. So that divided by EI will give you your delta. Okay, so this is the general equation which you need to remember. AX bar divided by EI, AX bar divided by EI. Okay, so area is what? Area is the bending moment diagram area, and X bar is the area, X bar is the distance from your support. Okay, from a support. And EI is your flexural rigidity, E into I. Okay, so this is our moment area method which we will be using to calculate, okay, delta if a random beam is given, if not a standard, if any beam which is not standard, right? So if you give, if we have been given any beam which is not standard, you have to draw your bending moment diagram and you can calculate delta by using Moore's theorem, okay, Moore's moment area method. Now moving on to, so we are done with gravity loads. Okay, we are done with the first part. Okay, so we are done with this first part. Under short-term deflection, we are done with gravity loads. Now moving on to your second part, wherein we have to look into your short-term deflection caused by your pre-stressing force. Okay, short-term deflection caused by your pre-stressing force. Right, we are done with these two parts. Now we have to calculate. We have to look into how you calculate delta PF. Okay, delta PF. So now due to pre-stress, the deflection of pre-stress beam depends on the tendon profile. Okay, it depends on your tendon profile. That is, the pre-stressing force causes a deflection only if CGS is eccentric to CGC. Okay, so what I mean by this statement is, this is what this dotted line is your CGC. It is your CG of your concrete. Okay, CG of your concrete. And this is what this red color line, it is a tendon. Okay, it is a tendon. So this is CGS. So in your cross section, it will be visible like this. In your cross section. So this point is your CGC and this point is your CGS. So if there is some eccentricity between these two, okay, if there is some eccentricity, suppose eccentricity, I'll name it as E. Okay, only if this E is there, okay, only if there is some eccentricity, only then there will be deflection caused. Okay, only then your deflection will be caused. Suppose if your CGC and your CGS are concentric, if they are concentric, suppose if you have a cross section of your beam like this, this is your CG of your concrete, and your tendon is also at this location. Tendon is also at the same location. Okay, in your longitudinal section, it will be visible like this. So this is your tendon, which is at your neutral axis itself. So there will be no deflection, right? Because it is at the center. It will neither hog, it will neither sag. Okay, so whenever there is eccentricity, there will be deflection caused. Okay, so remember this very important point. So whenever if you, in your question, if you see that there is no eccentricity, then delta PF will be equal to 0. Okay, directly it will be equal to 0. So now moving on, how do you exactly calculate now? How do you exactly calculate? We will be using Moore's theorem. Okay, we will be using Moore's moment area theorem. Same thing which we had used previously. A into x bar divided by EI. Okay, now this beam, as I've shown over here, is having a straight cable. Okay, it is having a straight cable. This is our pre-stressing force P. Okay, and it is having eccentricity E. Okay, now this is your bending moment diagram, which I have drawn over here, BMD. Okay, now what is this value? This value, can anyone tell me what is this moment value over here? Over here throughout it is P into E. Okay, this is your bending moment, which is P into E, right? Nothing but your moment. Now, I want the deflection at the center. Okay, usually your deflection, maximum deflection occurs at the center. Okay, maximum deflection occurs at the center. So now if we want the deflection at the center, you have to calculate the area from your support up to your center span. Right, as I've told you, you have to calculate area from your support up to your center span. So this shaded area, which you can see, you have to calculate that area that is represented by A, area multiplied by the perpendicular distance x bar. So what is x bar? Centroid of this area from your support, distance of your centroid from your support, right? This is your support, right? This is your support, the distance of your centroid of this particular area, okay, of this particular area from your support. So this I will term as x, right? This is your x bar. So can anyone tell me now what I have to substitute for A? This is L, okay? The total span is L. So how much is this? How much is this length total? It is L by 2. So now what is A? It is P into E into what? L by 2. Correct? This is A. And what is x bar? What is x bar? It is nothing but L by 2 divided by 2. Okay, divided by whole thing divided by EI. Correct? So can anyone simplify this for me and tell me the final answer? Can anyone simplify this equation and tell me the final answer? Delta is equal to what finally? There will be EI at the bottom. There will be P, there will be E, and L by something. How much L? L into L, L squared, and 2 into 2 into 2, right? It will be 8. So now how much it is totally? It is PL squared, PEL squared by 8 EI. So this is how you calculate if you have a straight tendon. Okay, if you have a straight tendon at an eccentricity E, delta due to pre-stressing force will be equal to PEL squared by 8 EI. So have you understood how do you calculate delta when you have an eccentric cable? Have understood, guys? Please let me know, or else I'll explain once more if you didn't understand.
Yes, sir. Understood.
Understood now? Clear? Others?
Yes, sir.
Understood, sir.
If you didn't understand, if you are confused, other next solutions will also be difficult for you to understand. So the first thing you have to understand very clearly. Understood, guys? Others? Ranganath, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, understood now. Please focus over here. Okay, if you don't understand
Yes,
the
sir.
initial thing, you'll face trouble. You'll face problem while understanding the next ones. So this is a basic one. Okay, very easy. First, delta PF. We are concerned with delta PF. Deflection caused by your pre-stressing force. Okay, so now this pre-stressing force will cause hogging, right? It will cause your beam to deflect upwards. It will cause a beam to deflect upwards. So this will be always minus. Okay, so delta PF, when you have eccentric cable, it will be minus PEL squared by 8 EI. Okay, so you have to remember this formula also. Remember this formula. So prepare a chart. I am telling you, you have to prepare a chart, write down all these conditions and write down this deltas, all of these deltas besides your figure. Okay, you have to practice and you have to remember. Now suppose I'll give you one condition. Now you have to answer. You have to answer. Okay. So if this cable was over here, suppose it will not be there. It will not be there. Suppose it is if it was here. Okay, I'll tell you delta will be equal to the same thing. E L squared by 8 EI. So now whether it will be positive, whether it will be negative, you have to answer.
Positive, sir.
Positive. Why is it positive? Can you explain?
Because it is
It is
Because
what?
it is the line, the action, it is above
above the
the
center.
Above the
neutral
neutral
axis,
axis. Okay, above the neutral axis. Whether it is
Yes,
sagging or whether it is hogging.
so okay.
Sagging.
It is hogging,
Okay,
sir.
you are confused between sagging and hogging.
Sagging,
Answer whether
Sagging,
it is
sir.
sagging, right? So answer whether it is upward deflection or downward deflection.
Downward.
Downward, sir.
Downward, right? Downward, right? Downward deflection. It will cause your beam to sag. It will cause downward deflection. So as I've told you, downward deflection we will consider as positive. So this will be positive in this case. Okay, but this will not be the case. Okay, this will not be the case. Always your tendon will be below your neutral axis. Okay, below your neutral axis. So this is how you can calculate when you have a straight tendon. Okay, when you have a straight tendon. Now, next condition. Okay, straight cable is a first case. Second case, it is a parabolic cable. Okay, it is a parabolic cable. You can observe in red color, this is your tendon having a parabolic shape. Okay, this is your E and this is your pre-stressing force P which is acting. Okay, so it is E at the center span and it is 0. Okay, it is 0 at our support. There is no eccentricity at our support. So the total span of our beam is L. Okay, now this is what? This is half of it. Okay, so this is L by 2. Now the moment which it is causing is same P into E. Okay, this is our moment. This is up to this point. So this is our bending moment diagram which I have drawn over here. So this is BMD. So now we have to solve and we have to calculate delta using the same method previous. Now can you tell me what is the area? What is the area? Can you tell me? Area. This shaded area I need because deflection will be maximum at the center span, right? So I need area from support to center span. Can you tell me the area? Area of this half parabola which I have shaded. Can you tell me how much is it? No answer, no idea, no idea. Is it? I'll give you two options. Is it 2/3 of the area or is it 1/3?
Sir, 2/3.
Sure, are you sure it is 1/3 or 2/3?
2/3, sir.
Sure, others? What others think? Are you going with this answer of 2/3?
Yes, sir. 2/3, sir.
2/3, right? Correct. It is 2/3, not 1/3. When will be it 1/3? When will be it 1/3? Can you tell me?
Triangles.
No. Triangle will be 1/2, right? Half base into height. 1/2.
Yes.
So when you have a parabolic of this shape, okay, when it is of this shape, okay, when it is this shape, it will be 1/3. So now we are we're dealing with the remaining part, right? We are dealing with this part. So it is 2/3 and this is 1/3. And if you add 1/3 plus 2/3, it will be whole number, right? It will be 1. Okay, so remember this thing. It will be easier for you to remember. Okay, so as you have told me, it is 2/3. So I'll write 2/3. 2/3 of what? 2/3 into how much? Tell me.
L/2.
L/2 into
P.
right.
Into PE,
Yes,
sir.
correct. So as you have told me, correct answer you have told me. A, we are done with A. Now what about X bar? I have written over here. This is 5/8 of L/2. So now tell me X bar. What is X bar? It is on your screen itself. On your screen. Just read it. Read it.
5/8.
5/8
5/8 of L/2. 5/8 of
L/2,
L/2.
sir.
Right, because this distance is L/2. It is not L. Okay, if it was totally L, we would have taken 5/8 of L because it is L/2. You have taken 5 by 8. Okay, what is this distance now? What is this? This is the remaining distance, that is 3 by 8. 3 by 8. Okay, 5 by 8 is this part and 3 by 8 is this part. Okay, divided by I. Now, can you please simplify and tell me the final answer? Anyone simplify and tell me the final answer? Simplify this equation. Something into PE into L by I. Something into P into L by I. There is some term over here. Number, some fractional number. How much is that? Tell me.
2/3.
Totally multiply all these numbers which you can see over here. Multiply all of these numbers. Tell me the final answer.
So 10 by 72.
10 by 72. Calculate. This will cancel out. So how many L's are there? 2 L's. So this will become squared. P into E I have written. E I have written. Then 3 into 8 into 2. How much? 5 by? 5 by how much?
48.
48. Huh?
Yes, sir.
5 by 48. Okay, so remember this equation. Remember, you have to use this whenever you have a parabolic type of cable. When you have a parabolic cable, you have to substitute and find out delta using this formula. Okay, 5 by 84, 5 by 48, PE L squared by EI. Okay, so have you understood when you have a parabolic cable?
Yes, sir.
Okay, no problem.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So as I've
No,
told you, this BMD is also negative. This BMD which you draw is also negative because this will be causing your beam to hog. So it is causing upward deflection. So this value will also be negative. Okay, so do not forget the negative sign. Do not forget the negative sign. Next, moving on. When you have a sloped tendon, when you have a sloping tendon or a halved tendon, as I've told you, HARPED, halved tendon, single halved tendon. So this is E, this is what? P into E, this is what? The total half of it, so L by 2. Now this is what? Now you have to tell me delta. What is delta? Area. What is the area now?
Half base into height.
Half base into height, right? What is base and what is height?
L by 2.
L by 2, sir, into PE.
Into PE, right? Correct. So this is your area. Now what about your X? X bar? How much is this? Is it 3 by 4 or 1 by 4?
1 by 4.
1 by 4, sir.
It is 1. This distance is 1 by 4.
L by
3 by 4, sir.
Sure. Are you sure?
Yes, sir. 3 by 4.
3 by 4, right? Sure, 100%.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it is 3/4. 3/4 of what? 3/4 of what?
L by 2.
Right, correct. 3/4 of L by 2. So it is 3 by 4 of L by 2. Divided by what? Divided by I. Now simplify this and tell me answer. P into E into L divided by I.
Sir, L square.
L squared, right? 2 L's are there. So L squared. Now, next 3 by something. 3 by something.
3 by 32.
3 by 32 EI, sir.
3 by
32.
32 EI, sir.
this is your result. Okay, so this is delta caused by pre-stressing force. Okay, when you have a single tendon. Okay, let me just verify. Let me just verify whether we are doing it correctly. Let me just check. Are you sure whether we are doing correctly?
Yes, sir.
Let me
Yes,
just
sir.
verify once. Let me just verify once. Okay, so the first answer what we have got is correct. For parabolic cable it is correct. Pi by 48 P L squared by EI. But when you have a linear bent tendon, okay, single bent tendon which you are solving now, it is 1 by 12. It is 1 by 12. Is it 1 by 12? We have gone wrong somewhere. We have gone wrong somewhere.
we left the parts of the function.
Where we have gone wrong? Can you find out where we have gone wrong?
Sir, we left that length, sir.
We have gone wrong while in this we have gone wrong.
Sir, we left that part, sir.
Which part we have left?
From that center.
It is not 3 by 4. It is not 3 by 4. It is 2 by 3. Instead of 3 by 4, use 2 by 3 and calculate. 2 by 3. So this 2 and this 2 will cancel. So 3 into 2 into 2. How much? 12, right?
6.
12, sir.
12.
12,
So
sir.
it is 1 by 12. 1 by 12 PE L squared by EI. Now we have got the correct result. So it is not 3/4, it is 2/3. Sorry. So as I've told you, it was not 3/4, it was 2/3. Okay, so if it is 2/3, this is 1/3. So we are not concerned with this. We are concerned with this side. Okay, so when you have a slope tendon, you have to use PEL squared by 2LEI. Next, moving on to next thing. So you have a double bent tendon, double slope tendon. So now you have to calculate. Okay, you have to calculate this area. Wherein if we have divided into two areas. So this is your triangular area, and then this is your rectangular area. So this we will consider as L1, and this will consider as L2. Okay, and then this is your X1, and then we will consider this as X2, and then this is your P into E. Okay, so if we try to solve for this delta, as I've told you, AX1, A1 X1 plus A2 X2 divided by EI, where A1 is for triangular portion and A2 is for rectangular portion. And if you try to solve, you will arrive at this result. You will arrive at this result. You can see at your bottom. Can you see it? Can you read? Anyone can read me? Can read this equation, please, for me?
Minus PE divided by 6EI bracket 2L1 square plus 6 L1 L2 plus 3 L2 square.
Okay, correct. So I hope you know what is L1, L2. L1, L2 I have shown over here in this figure. Okay, P, E, we know what is P, what is E, EI, we know, no problem. So when you have a double tendon like this in your question, you have to use this formula to calculate the delta PF. Okay, delta PF, you have to use this formula. Okay, so in your chart, you draw this figure, and besides you write this formula. Okay, delta.
Sir,
yes.
Sir, in question they will give us the sentence, or they will give us the figure, sir?
They'll give you sentence. You have to draw the figure. Okay, usually they give it in a sentence form.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so it will be easy. If you read, you will understand what kind of profile it is. Okay. Once you practice, it will not be a problem.
Okay.
So this is regarding your trapezoidal cable. Now moving on to your sloping tendon. So what is the difference between this? What is the difference between this sloping tendon and what is the difference between this sloping tendon? Can you observe and tell me what is the difference?
Sir, their only triangular portion will come. Here both rectangle and triangular.
Okay, so as what you are telling me, you have to consider both these BMDs. You have to consider both the BMDs you are telling me. That is correct. You have to consider both of this. But the difference between the previous one and this one is that
eccentricity is both, sir.
Yes, correct. Both so we have eccentricity at support also, right? In the previous one, eccentricity was not there at the support. It was starting at the centroid itself, right? It was like this. It was this in this format. So you have only one eccentricity E over here. So, but in this condition, we have eccentricity at the support also, right? So you have to consider that eccentricity also. Okay. So now we have to what we'll do is we'll separate into two BMDs. We'll separate that into two BMDs. So this is for P into E1. Okay, this is considering your E1. Okay, this eccentricity, right? So when you have force which is acting at this point, okay, when a force is acting above your neutral axis, it will cause downward deflection, right? Whenever your force is at your above your neutral axis, it will cause downward deflection, right? It will cause hogging. Sorry, it will cause sagging. So it will be positive. Understood? It will be positive. So P into E1, it will cause a positive bending moment in this format. Okay, it will be acting throughout same. P into E1, it will be same. Okay, So this is the area which we are concerned with, half of this area. So this is x1, right? This is x1, and this P into E1 I have told. Next, because of the total eccentricity E1 and E2, okay, it will cause hogging minus. Okay, and this height, okay, it is what? This height is what? P into E1 plus E2, P into E1 plus E2. So this is what? X2, centroidal distance, and this is what? This I have mentioned over here. Minus P into E1 plus E2. So when you add both of this, when you calculate the area A1, X1, A2, X2, and you add, you will arrive at this formula. PL squared by 24 EI into E1, okay, E1 is here, minus 2 into E2. E2 is the centroidal eccentricity. Okay, whenever you have this kind of cable profile, you have to use this formula. Okay, so here the resultant deflection at the center, okay, we are dealing with deflection at center because centroidal deflection is the maximum one. Okay, so the resultant deflection at the center is obtained as the sum of the upward deflection. So this is upward deflection, this is upward deflection, and this is downward deflection. It is the resultant, or it is the sum of both upward deflection due to E1, E2 and downward deflection due to E1. Okay, so both of this you have to add, and then you have to find out the total deflection caused, okay, by this sloped tendon. Okay, so this is not upward, this is a downward deflection, and this is upward deflection. Okay, so this result you can remember directly, no need of any derivation. You can remember this directly. PL squared by 24 EI E1 minus 2 E2. Next, last one we will calculate, and we will finish this session. So when you have a parabolic tendon, okay, and also with the eccentricity at the support, okay, a parabolic cable having central eccentricity E2 and also having a support eccentricity E1. Okay, so it will have two kinds of bending moment diagram. This is due to downward deflection due to E1, and this is due to upward deflection caused by E1 plus E2. Okay, E1 plus E2. So this is negative because it is upward deflection, and this is positive because it is downward deflection. So this I will consider area A1, okay, and this centroidal distance as x1, and this area I will consider as A2, and this centroidal distance as x2. So A1 x1 plus A2 x2 divided by EI will give me this result. PL squared by 48 EI E1 minus 5 E2. Okay, the previous one was what? Same. PL squared is common in both the results. PL squared, right? So 24 was for this case, and here it is double, right? 48. It is double, and this case also it is same, but instead of 2 it is 5. Correct? It is instead of 2 it is 5 over here. That is easy to remember, right? Easy to remember. So when you have a parabolic tendon with end eccentricity, you have to use this result. Okay, PL squared by 48 EI into E1 minus 5 E2. This is giving your delta due to pre-stressing force by this cable profile. Okay, so depending upon the cable profile, you have to calculate delta PF. So now we are done with all of this. Okay, we are done with all the short-term deflections. We are done with all of this. Okay, so initially we have calculated what is the deflection caused by dead load and live load, and then now we have looked into how we calculate the deflection caused by pre-stressing force, right? Delta dead load plus delta live load plus delta pre-stressing force. So summation of all of this will give you delta short term. Okay, so we have various formulas for this separately, and we have separate formulas for this one. Okay, make a list and start practicing, and try to remember all of these formulas. Okay, your direct substitution you have to do, and you have to calculate delta ST. No need of any derivation. Okay, you have the formulas with you, you have to substitute and you have to find out. Next, after short term, so as I've told you, short term formulas, here we have all of these short term formulas for dead load, live load, and then if you have any random dead load, live load given to you, you can use moment area theorem to calculate. Okay, then deflections due to pre-stress, various cable profiles. Okay, you can calculate, and then After short term, this is long term deflection. Very easy. Long term deflection, only one formula. Long term deflection, only one formula. Delta load, delta, that is deflection caused due to dead load, live load. Okay, the deflection caused due to dead load and live load. This includes both dead load plus live load. Then delta P, this is nothing but deflection caused due to pre-stress, deflection caused due to pre-stressing force, PF. Okay, we know what is the formula for delta PF for various cable profiles. So delta PF, and this is called as your loss ratio. This is called as your loss ratio. Okay, so PF by PI. So what is PF? Initial pre-stressing force. Initial pre-stressing, it is final pre-stressing force PF divided by initial pre-stressing force, that is PI. And 1 plus phi. What is phi? Phi is nothing but a creep coefficient. So if you substitute in all of this, your respective values, you will get your final deflection. Directly you will get a final deflection. Okay, so short-term deflection you have to calculate by substituting in those formulas, and for final deflection you have to substitute in this formula, and then you can find out a long-term deflection. So as I've told you, for long-term deflection we have this particular this thing, right? Limit, we have limit as per our code book, span by 250. So span by 250 you can do, and you can compare this long-term deflection, okay, LT. So I'll write this notation for long-term deflection as delta LT. Okay, so should your deflection be lesser than span by 250, or should it be larger than span by 250? Should it be lesser? This value should be
Lesser, sir.
lesser, right? It should always be lesser than span by 250. It should be lesser. Okay, so when it is lesser, so it is within the limit. Whenever your delta LT is lesser than span by 250, it is within the limit, it is within your limit of serviceability. No problem. If it is larger, then it is not okay. Then you have to redesign your beam. You redesign your beam. So this is regarding your short-term deflection and long-term deflection, okay? Regarding short-term and long-term. And with this, all of this data, we can calculate. Now we can move on to numericals from the next class. Okay, so if you have any doubt, please let me know, whether in short term, in long term, or any of the theory part. Have you understood, guys?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, no problem. So this is regarding the theory
No problem, sir.
Theory part. Okay, thank you. This is regarding the theory part. Or what you do is you note down all of this, make a list. Okay, make a list, and it will be helpful for you to solve. Okay, in the next class. So in the next class, what we will do, we'll start with the numericals. Okay, regarding deflection. Okay, so make a list and note down all the deflection for short term, for long term. What are the formulas for various cable profiles, for various dead loads, live loads, various things we have. I have explained to you today. Make a list, keep it with you while solving. Okay, you have to recall, you have to substitute in those formulas, calculate short-term deflection, calculate long-term deflection, and then compare that with your limits, and then write a comment whether it is permissible, whether it is not permissible, whether it is okay, whether it is safe or unsafe. You have to write a statement. Okay, so numericals are very easy. You have to just remember the formulas. So I am stressing on that. So make a list of all the formulas so that it is helpful for you to solve. Okay, so this is regarding the theory part of a deflection. So numericals you'll require, I think 2 to 3 hours will be requiring to solve your numericals. Okay, so I hope you have understood. You can start typing in your attendance now. So if you are confused with any of the part, any of the solution or any of the theory part, you can ask me now, you can ask me later on whenever you are free, or always you can go through the videos, okay, which I will be uploading in the YouTube. Please type in your attendance quickly, everyone.